Hello everybody, welcome to the Carole Nash Classic Bike Guide Winter Show. We are at the Newark Showground for what is already turning out to be a fantastic outing for motorcyclists heavy off their two wheels set in the new year. I'm here with Alan Carter, the GP legend, the racing legend who is, don't look so embarrassed you are, and we're going to have a bit of a run through about Alan's life and career, and we're also going to talk about his new book. This is called Light in the Darkness by Alan Carter, and I heartily recommend it. If you haven't read it so far, do get out there and get yourself a copy. It is at times a hard read because of the brutal honesty in there, and I have to say it's one of the best books on the market at the moment. Right, let's get on with the interview then. And Alan, you up for it?
Absolutely. Totally.
Rocking, love it, let's do it. Right, Alan, I really want to get started with this from the beginning. You know, tell us about where you came from as Alan Carter, and also I want to touch on your family because you know, Mel Carter, very famous in the racing scene. Did being part of the Carter family act as a help, or at times was it a hindrance for you?
I think if you go back obviously to the late 60s, early 70s, my dad was a good racer. He was a good sort of quality club racer, and he sponsored people. And then as I was a kid, obviously from being born, I was going to all the racetracks. And then how I really got into it more sort of heavy was when Phil Haslam got killed at Scarborough. Ron then became my dad's #1 rider, and I ended up, when I got to about 14, being the team's gopher. So that's how I got involved, you know. And then basically all the fantastic, most, you know, the greatest riders in the world, I thought at the time, was people like Sheen, Marshall, Dave Potter, Ron, you know, Newball, Mick Grant. You know, look, that was the era when I was a gopher. So been around there and seeing these massive crowds of between anything from, you know, 40 to 80,000 fans really gave me a buzz. That was it. I wanted to be a racer. You know, I never thought of anything else.
The influence of those races, I mean, you reeled off a list of legendary names in the British racing scene, but what effect did they have on you as a young racer? Did you learn how to prepare for races? Was it a process of osmosis? Were you taking in things and not being aware of them? Are you aware of that now looking back?
Yeah, I think definitely. Yeah, because I was there. I was taking the bikes to scrutineering. I was collecting the fuel. I was, you know, studying the loading bays, loading areas. I was on the front row of the grids. I was, you know, and not just in England. You know, my dad took me to the Imola 200 and Paul Ricard, and you know, I remember actually meeting Randy Mamola when he was 17, and he couldn't even race a bike. He did 2 consolation laps at Imola on a 250, and we stayed in the same hotel, and he shot me with a BB gun.
Where?
Right in the ass. He did.
That sounds like Randy. Really.
Yeah, I never forgot that.
You never will. The family, being part of the Carter family in the racing scene at that time, was it a benefit to be a Carter, to be Alan Carter? Or did you find did that set a bar that you had to live up to?
The bar were really set by Kenny, my brother. He became the under-21 British champion. He then became the 1984 and 85, you know, British Speedway champion. He become the world pairs champion with Peter Collins, the captain of England, and you know, the captain of Halifax. So his benchmark and his level was to be the world's #1 speedway rider. And when I started, basically Mal said to me, we had 3 garages at the time, you know, selling second-hand cars, and he sponsored several riders and basically said to me, if you're any good, I'll sponsor you to the hill and back, but if you're crap, you can wash cars at the garage. So my first job was £32 a week washing cars at the garage, and then I started club racing, and I just progressed really quickly.
Did you feel the pressure then of what Kenny was achieving and had achieved at that point? Did that put extra pressure on you, or did you put the pressure on yourself?
I think I put the pressure on myself. I wanted to be as good or better. I knew I wasn't naturally gifted, as what Kenny was in balance and skill. But I knew I'd got determination and heart, and I wanted it bad. So I knew I had certain qualities that would come through.
I don't think anybody would doubt you don't have determination and heart, Alan. But when you got into the racing scene and there was some success, and we started to see you come through the ranks, certainly UK, you were being noticed very, very rapidly. It seemed then, career-wise, that you went to Europe and you sort of almost stayed out of the UK. Was that by design, or was that by just the way it happened?
My career was, to be honest, just going nicely. In 1982, everything was going well. At beginning of the year, I did a national at Donington. There were people like Charlie Williams, Jeff Sale, Tony Rogers, top guys in Grand Prix, and they absolutely, thrashed me. But I was racing 2 times a week then in England for 6 months. When at the end of the World Championship in 1982, the new world champion was Jean-Louis Trenard. So they came back for the Jodicek to Gold Cup at Donington. Everybody was there, from Lucanelli to Franco Ancini, the whole lot. Roberts, Mamola, Ron.
Some great targets for a young rider to sort of measure themselves against.
I mean, we were rough and ready. We were a rough and ready family. I mean, my dad was a sort of a rough diamond, and he sent me on my travels to that meeting. And when I set off to go to Donington that day, the wheel exploded on the caravan. So I panicked, and when you had a problem, the thing you did is you always rang Mal. So I rang Mal and said, I'm on the side of the motorway, what do I do? Well, obviously, normal people would say, right, ring the AA or get the police out. Mal basically said, rip the number plate off the caravan, take everything out and leave it. So the next minute, I'm on my way to this big international in my 608 Mercedes van, with nowhere to stay and anything. And that's how the sort of life we lived. It's just, and I just went along with things.
Yeah.
So, getting back to the Jodicek to Gold Cup, I won every race. I didn't win one race. I won 2 250s. I beat the world champion. I beat all the rest of the Grand Prix guys, nearly the whole field. And then I went out on the 350 and won that too. That probably was my undoing, really. Because I didn't have much experience. It was my second full season. And I just beat the world champion, and that was it. I was then in all the national press as the new Barry Sheen.
That's an interesting part about the new Barry Sheen, because there were several riders coming through, and we kept hearing the new Barry Sheen, the new Barry Sheen, the new Barry Sheen. How did you feel when you saw that about yourself? Did it have an effect on you as a young rider in only your second season?
To be honest, I just took everything in my stride. I mean, at the time I had the looks, I had the mouth, a bit like Barry, I could pull things off. I didn't have his charisma, but I had the charm and cheekiness. And I told the News of the World that I was going to make him look like a monk, which,
knowing how Barry lived his life was quite a claim.
Yeah. I mean, I really did say that I was going to make him look like a monk and show him how to do it correctly. I was going to be the man, and I really thought I was, and it just didn't quite pan out, but I certainly had a good try.
Going back to the European angle of it, was it a bit of design that you decided you weren't going to do as much in the UK and you were going to concentrate on the big foreign races? Or is that just the way it happened for you?
No, like I say, I won at Donington. The next minute, Armstrong CCM, which was run out of Bolton, offered me £25,000 and a full contract, everything. All the mechanics, everything it paid, a fantastic deal. And then at the 11th hour, Mitsui Yamaha rang my dad and said, look, we'd like Alan to be racing for Yamaha and with a view to racing a 500. And my dad was my manager and coach, and he decided we were going to go down that route. So we burnt a serious bridge there. So the Armstrong that Mackenzie and Donny McLeod went on to race for 2 or 3 seasons in GPs, that was all designed and was basically set up for me. And I just rode that bike at Donington. The one I raced at Donington and beat the world champion and the rest of the guys on was a year old. So I actually raced an 81 model. They had all brand new alley swinging arms and trick bits. I just had an old steel swinging arm, but it didn't make any difference. So 1 minute, you know, I was sort of a national English racing kid, and then I was thrown in the World Championship. So I didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
I'd never even been out of England. The furthest I'd ever been was to Ireland. And I went and I raced at Mondello Park. I become the youngest national winner in history. Then I become the youngest international winner, and then the youngest ever Grand Prix winner.
What does that do to the psyche of a young rider? How do you deal with that? Because you've gone from effectively a standing start to being internationally known, to being exceptionally good on the motorcycle. What does that do to a kid?
I had everything. I bought a brand new sports car, and I bought a new house, detached house. I was 18, and you had to be 18 to have an international license. So it's not like today. You know, I was the youngest guy in the World Championship. My first Grand Prix ever was South Africa. I was 5th place, dicing for the lead, and my chain snapped. So when I went to Le Mans, my engine seized up on both cylinders every practice, bar the last one. So I qualified last. I was on the back row.
With your fingers on the clutch, and just waiting for it to go all the time.
It was push start in them days.
No, sorry, I remember when you were riding round. You must have just been sitting there waiting for it to go then, if it was happening all the time.
Well, I was. Oh yeah, sorry. In the practice, yeah. I seriously. Yamaha brought factory kits. For some reason, we were late to get to Le Mans, so everybody had taken everything. You know, Saron had taken his stuff, and Carlos and Ivan Palazese, my great friend who died at Nuremberg, unfortunately. Lovely guy, we were, super friends. We were late, so we ended up with a box with all the sort of junk that was left. So my bike just kept seizing. We got it running, qualified I think about 34th, and in them days it was 4-3 or 5-4 on the grid, and there were 36 on the grid. I think there was about 20 non-qualifiers, because there was about 65 people trying to qualify for the race, and I don't really know what happened. All I know is I got my head down, I was picking people off, I was pulling positions, and when I came past start and finish out at the last turn at Le Mans, onto the start and finish, I kept passing people on the inside and the pit lanes on the right. So I would, as I was coming past people, I couldn't see my pit board because I was passing people against the Armco. It was Armco before the chicane. And all I knew I was in the top 3. I swear I didn't even know I won the race.
Really?
I came in, Norrie White, the famous, obviously journalist, said he was going crazy. And I looked at him and I said, who won? And he just looked at me in disbelief. And I didn't know.
Norrie White, a gigantic Scottish man, for those who don't know Norrie, and you were a little English lad who won quite a scene. And
I set the track record on the last lap. So it just all happened. And then my next Grand Prix was the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, which was an amazing place. I mean, you when you go there and you go under the bridge, your ears stand up and you feel really eerie. It's just a feel like no other track in the world. And I was about 5th place again, and Saron Christian crashed in front of me, and I ran him over. So I crashed. So basically, after 3 rounds, I should have been leading the World Championship, and we should have been flying, but I'd only had 2 DNFs and a win.
What appeals to Alan Carter as a racer back then? What appealed to you? Was it a case of, did you relish more being the underdog, having to come out and fight, or did you perform better when it was all going right? Because some races are either way, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no. My problem is I didn't have any respect. I didn't give a care in the world who they were, what they did. They were having it.
Does a racer need respect?
I don't know.
When you're out on track, do you need respect? Surely it's about, you don't really give a monkey if that guy's there. If that's Valentino Rossi there and you can do him, do you not do him?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I just didn't. All I figured, I was the man. And winning the Grand Prix, how could I learn anything?
Yeah.
I've just won. I'm the youngest ever Grand Prix winner. What can Barry Sheen teach me? He's like, or Phil Reed. People did try and help me, but I knew everything. It was only after I learned that I didn't know much. The
benefit of hindsight. So I suppose when things were going well for you, I mean, when things were all happening for you out on track, that was where you didn't learn. But when you were on the back foot, when you had to come back, when you didn't have the best machinery, or if you had a problem to overcome, was that where we saw the best of Alan Carter?
I think I've always sort of unfortunately gone against the grain. You know, I've always kind of viewed my life as like a trout or a salmon that's going to swim upstream against the current and spawn and die. But what I've found is in life that eventually you'll run out of energy. And you could be 20, 30 or 40, but at some point you've got to just relax and let the current take you. And that's how I live my life now. So I'm a completely different person. I wish...
Hey, those of us who saw you race in the ICGP on the classics, I don't fully believe that, if I'm being honest with you, because put you back on the bike and you're still a bit of a demon out there. Let's talk about your time with Kenny Roberts, when you went into the 250 team there, especially with the period when Wayne Rainey was brought over. I've spoken to Wayne about this previously, and Wayne has told me that he was told to watch you. You were the man, and he was to learn as much as he could off you, which not only says a lot about your status and what people thought of you, but what was that like from your point of view to be in a team with Kenny Roberts, the great Kenny Roberts at that period of racing history, of course, and this new kid, Wayne Rainey, coming through?
Well, I'd finished 14th in the world. I was the youngest ever Grand Prix winner. My focus was on people like Carlos Lovato, Christian Saron, world champions, Grand Prix winners, and this American kid meant nothing. Absolutely nothing. I mean, lovely kid, thought he was a super duper kid, but I mean...
He was a so what, wasn't he? He was another so what, right?
Well, he didn't have a track record. Yeah. I didn't know anything about America, so I never ever thought about him really.
Did it irk you a little bit that this kid was being given a 250 Grand Prix ride when he hadn't come from that discipline? Whereas with you, you'd come through not standard, but the sort of laid out 250, that beautiful discipline of race bikes and learning to set them up. And there was this kid coming from superbikes, Kawasaki's in America.
No, absolutely. I mean, I was just focused on, as a racer, I'm not interested in his diet or his exercise program or whatever. I'm focused on my deal. Yeah, and that's all that matters. I'm going to be the world champion. I never thought about finishing in the top 5 or second. My only goal in life was to be the 250 world champion. Now, when I signed for Kenny, we did the deal in London, and a few weeks after he rang me up and said, look, I want you in the team, but I don't want you to have anything to do with the team. It's my team. Now you've got to remember, I'm like still 18. I've got to now break the news to a very hard man.
And Mel's been so influential.
Absolutely.
Throughout,
spent a fortune. He's my manager, my coach. I've got to now tell him, in effect, I'm dumping you because Kenny Roberts says we want you, but we don't want him. So I fell out with my dad. I then had suddenly got no travelling companion, so I'm doing the whole World Championship on my own.
Before the days of easy things like internet as well and mobile phones.
Yeah. And my saving grace was my 2 mechanics from 83 were with me. So Wayne Rainey was coming to the World Championships, unknown, with no mechanic, with no package. I got my 2 right-hand generals. Okay? So Kenny said, we need you to come to America and train for the winter. I said, I'm busy, I'm building a flat. Which, looking back, I think, you're building a flat? You've gone mad.
You also want to give yourself a slap around the face back there, don't you?
Well, I want to strangle myself. So Kenny, I don't know, just said, oh, whatever, yeah, okay. And they went to Daytona, and I think he might have won Daytona or broke down. I can't remember now. But he did very well. He may have been on pole, but Wayne's first outing on a 250 was extremely well. Well, when we got to South Africa, you could see the favouritism. I've got pictures, you can see the body language. You can see the way they had the backs turned to me and it was all Wayne. You got not only Kenny, you got Kenny's right-hand man, Kel Carruthers, another ex-250 world champion, and a genius. So Wayne had got Kenny and he got Kel, and a good mechanic. Now, he banged his bike on six quickest in qualifying. So I winked at Howard, my mechanic, and said, watch this, right? So I went out and put mine on 5th, just to prove a point. And that was the qualifying for the round 1 of the World Championship.
Did that strengthen you, that body language, that favouritism, that split down the garage, did that strengthen you, or are you the rider who was as much as you try and block those things out, because you're going to see it, it's going to have an effect. Was it a positive or a negative?
It was positive because I work off negative motivation. Because all I've ever been told is that I'm crap. And if I won a race by 5 seconds, my dad would say I was rubbish round Mansfield or I was bad into Redgate. And I'd be like, I've just won by 5 seconds.
But you should have won by 7, you should have won by 8.
So
that's what you were getting
the
back.
thing is, having Mal, a notorious hard man, who crushed many races, who finished their careers.
Yeah.
Really, Kenny Roberts was like having putty in my hand compared to Mal. And the thing is, he picked on Wayne. He really did treat Wayne bad and pick on him a lot.
In what way? What way did you say?
Just derogatory comments, calling him gay, calling him a vicar, a puff, all sorts of things. And it was relentless. He never backed off. It went on and on. You know when you back off?
Yeah.
But he just went on and on. But he never said a word to me. So it was brilliant for me. Now, fortunately, all the goodies that they put on his bike didn't work. He'd got no really experience, had he? So how could he tell, you know, I got a year's experience. It would be absolutely, you know, a very smart move for Kenny to give me the good stuff. But fortunately, all the stuff they brought, an aluminium frame from America, and if you look at the pictures of the first round of the World Championship, already in Kyalami, he had twin front brakes. I had single standard brakes. So, you know, he got Hummel cylinders and things I never saw. You know, so there was a lot of favouritism, but it didn't work, and I had Howard, and it made me angry.
Well, was that, so almost with him getting the new parts, the new equipment that was coming over, it sounds almost like that worked in your favour, because you had Howard with you, you had your arm, as you keep saying, your arm, your generals there.
Yeah.
And it was almost like you were entrenched, you were sort of digging in. It was like, right, well, if this is how it's going to be, I'm going to show you what I can do on the track. Yeah? Was that the way?
Absolutely, yeah. And we had a good package. We didn't have a fast bike, but we had it handled, it steered. You know, the three things of a great racing bike: it's got to handle, it's got to steer, and you need the power. We didn't have the power, but the bike did. You know, it handled well, it steered, the brakes were good.
So if the rider's good, the rider can make up for a lot of deficiencies on pack. You can't make up on everything.
No.
But in the braking section and in the twist, it's down to you, isn't it? It's not so much the bike at that point. That's what we saw in you. What was your best race in 250 Grand Prix, do you think? What's the one you look back on and think, I want to take the win out of the equation almost, because that would be a bit too easy to say the win. But for you, from your point of view, from a racer's point of view, what was your best race, do you think? A lot of riders have races where, you know, they finish 17th or something, but because we don't know what's happening, because we don't know the cylinder's about to fall off the bike, it's a good race.
There's so many. I mean, I should have won about 15 Grand Prix and a couple of world titles. I didn't. I don't really know. I mean, I remember the French Grand Prix the year after when I raced for Kenny Roberts, and me and Wayne had been complaining, saying the bikes were rubbish and they were slow, and we got on a downward spiral. Kenny didn't turn up at many races, so we got on this negative and so forth. So Kenny turned up.
Was one feeding off the other at that point?
Yeah, we were just getting more negative because people like Manfred Hervé and Saron and Carlos had all got these bikes which were a lot faster than ours. You got the Chevaliers and all sorts of trick European equipment. Yeah. So Kenny turned up at Paul Ricard and said, well, okay guys, what's the problem with these bikes? So we told him how they were crap and slow, and well, Kenny said, I think I'd better have a go and see what the problem is. And he actually went a second faster than me and Wayne, which did two things. It completely crushed Wayne, but it completely fired me up. Yeah. I qualified 5th. I made a lousy start in about 20th. I came through to about 7th place, just past Wayne, catching the leading group, and the crankshaft broke. So that was another amazing ride that came to nothing. So probably something like that would be one that, you know, got away. That's one of them, one of the highlights.
Now, not a lot of people will remember this, I guess, if they were coming to the Alan Carter story fresh now, but you did have a go in World Superbikes. You did go out there at Donington. And, how was that for you, going from such a 250 Grand Prix life, really, onto a big diesel?
Difficult. in the beginning, I was 15. Mal put me on a 750, OW31, right in gear change. I crashed it at Donington. I stamped on the back brake instead of the gears. I had a big crash, really put me off. It shook me up. I was 8 stone. I just lost my confidence, and I shouldn't really have been riding that type of machines. You know, I was a young kid. So eventually, as I grew up into a man and got into my sort of 28, 30-year-old, I raced a Ducati Supermono at Mugello, and I finished 3rd. Killy won on the factory Supermono. A guy finished 2nd on the BMW, and I finished 3rd. Virginia was Carle's team manager. He actually raced the bike at that meeting, and he had a big crash and smashed the bike up. We basically had a word with him and said, would it be possible that we could ride the bike and help Carole win the World Championship with Scott Russell at Donington? And he came back to us and said yes. He said, I'll have to have a word with Carole. And Carole said, yeah, no problem, which was fantastic. So the meeting at Donington, basically me and Troy Corser got changed in the back of the van. And I think it was Troy's first ever World Superbike meeting. I couldn't see a thing. Troy said to me, you need to try one of these city fog shields. Now, I thought, as racers are all really selfish, he'd just pass me one of these fog shields. Yeah. Troy said, give me your helmet and I'll set and fit it all up for you. I was like, wow, this is a bit strange.
Happens different in this paddock.
What a nice guy. Anyway, I went out on the bike, Virginia's bike. It was completely trashed. They turned up at Donington, it was like brand new. It's just like it come out of a Ferrari showroom.
Wow.
I got black flagged in the first practice because the oil cooler was leaking. I was dumping oil on the track. So I came off, I had no time. The second session, I was really impatient, and you know, I had no times in. I came out, I did a couple of laps and nothing, and then I thought, this is it, this is my big lap. I squared it off like a V on the last corner, turned it and whacked the power on, and it threw me straight off. So I think I qualified about 33rd. I was pretty much on the back of the grid, and then we woke up Sunday morning and it was raining, and that was it. I just knew I'd got a good chance.
That was only where that had gone. Yeah. So you could fight at that point.
Yeah. My problem was, by the time I got to 4th position, the leaders had gone. You know, I'd come from the back.
Yes.
But to be honest, Scott and Troy were absolutely flying that day. The times they set was just unbelievable. And I managed to get 4th and 6th, and you know, beat Carole, Whit, Mackenzie. I beat the 2 factory Honda guys. You know, they were on big money riding for Honda, the Castrol Honda team. Yeah. Doug Paul and Aaron Sly, passed them from the back. And then I figured, I'm laughing now. I've been reborn, really, and something great's going to come from this. And I never got a phone call.
What a shame.
Not even a crap satellite team in Italy, or you know, maybe out of Mongolia or in anywhere, just not even a phone call. And I've just finished,
because you found that you sort of came to it so readily, you know, and it was such an opportunity.
But I did have my opportunities, you know, earlier in my life.
Yes, yeah.
I had a phone call from Agostini, and I declined his offer to race for his Marlborough 250 team because it was just a couple of races while his riders recovered from a broken leg, and the very, very top man of HRC, Aguma, came up to me in 1985 and said, he came up to me in South Africa and said, you want to ride 500? They were looking for a new superstar. Freddie's back wheel had collapsed, and they were struggling, they were having problems with him, you know, turning up and one thing and another. Yeah. And I said no. I was scared. I choked, and I've never choked ever really in my life.
What sort of age were you then?
I'd be about 23. 20.
20.
Yeah.
So effectively that was your second. Yeah. Start your 3rd season ever.
Yeah.
At a time when you couldn't race internationally until you were 18 anyway. So understandable. It's the equivalent of a 16-year-old kid now being given. Or being asked that question.
Yeah, giving Ross's ride,
Yeah, 16, would you take it?
I choked. I mean, he was there, he was on a plate.
Understandable.
I look back and, you know, I look back and think, you know, I live in a small house with a lovely woman, and, you know, to be honest, little money, but we're really happy. But you know, did that Monaco lifestyle go by? How would I have done? But then you just don't know. Maybe
exactly different paths. I just want to kind of get you onto a more up to date subject, if I can, just really from my own curiosity. But I've interviewed you and I've seen you in the BSB pit lane many times, Alan. And what's your thoughts on British Superbikes now as an entity, as a championship?
I think it's amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's the best racing in the world. I really do think the following, the TV, the riders, the equipment. I mean, you know, what was it, 2 or 3 years ago when Leon Camier and Aslam and a few of the guys went, I thought, oh, it's going to really drop.
Yeah.
But it's not, has it? It's back where it was.
You and I have had the conversation before about the outright speeds of these bikes, and I know that you were watching at Brands Hatch out of paddock as they were going up towards Druids, and you were saying how impressed you were with the sheer speed of like Tommy Hill's bike and Josh's bike and bikes like that.
Unbelievable. I mean, they really are amazing. It's amazing how fast they are. Just to watch visually, when you can get really next to the track near the marshal's box and see them coming and going in split seconds, it makes you think how the brain must work so fast. And obviously, it just adapts to it because that's what you do. Yeah. But it must, it just amazes me.
With the Superbike Championship being quite so strong in the UK at the moment, and the loss of 250s in Grand Prix, and now the loss of 125s in Grand Prix, what do you reckon to the Moto 2 style of bike and the Moto 3 style of bike that's coming? Mm. You know, you're a two-stroke man. Hell, I'm a two-stroke man. I love my two-strokes. Yeah. What do you think about it?
I think it's a shame. I mean, I think you need your bread and butter. You need your starting points. You need your small bikes. I think the World Championship, when they maybe had 50s, 125s, 250s, 500s, even the sidecars. I mean, sidecars had a great following. So I think it had a more spread of appeal to different people, where now it's very much of the same. Mm. I'm sure if somebody like Stefan Bradl would have been in the Moto GP race last year at Silverstone, I think he would have been in the top 5 on that bike.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I think it's a bad thing, because I don't think there's enough depth in. You've got the super sport, the super stock, you've the junior super stock. It's confusing.
Yes, confusing for us in racing at times, let alone people who are just tuning in on the off chance to watch a bit of racing.
I think as a fan, one of the things that I dislike is that a rider's number is his identification. Yeah. So you bond with a number. So when it's okay having transponders for timing, that's wonderful. But when they're all coming past you and there's no real numbers to be seen because they're either in a crazy position or they're not even on there, a nice big number like we used to have in the day is a positive thing. You got your identification. I remember last year, the year before, going to Cadwell, and they're all coming round. They all look similar colours, similar bikes, helmets, leathers, and it's difficult to, unless you're there every single race and So getting back onto the bike share, I think there should be more spread of different types.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you there. So what's the plan now then for Alan Carter? Where will we see you out and about? You're here at the Newark show, but what about you wearing the ICGP jacket? I know that there is talk that we might see you in the odd race in ICGP again, because you've been out and done that. But what's on the horizon for you?
I'm going to do some parades, possibly go to Spa, to Belgium, maybe Assen, Mallory 1000 Bike Classic, and then I'd like to do a couple of rounds of the CRMC. It's a fantastic club, a good championship. Just get my confidence back a little bit. I've had a couple of big crashes, and I'd like to go to Cadwell and Donington, and then look at possibly doing a couple of rounds of the ICGP, and then even 2013, then I'll probably be in a better position to have a go at something. But I've had a couple of injuries, so I'm a bit nervous.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Alan. But I'm sure that people who are racing those championships can't wait to see you out there. We can't wait to see you out there, and Alan, Carole, we'll let you get back to the show, but thanks so much for talking to us. Really enjoyed it.
Cheers. Thanks, Tony.